Sign the papers or I'll make sure you never work in this city again. That's what my stepfather said to me. Not quietly, not with any trace of embarrassment. He said it the way he said everything, like it was already decided, like I was just a detail he needed to sort out before moving on to something more important. I was 27 years old, standing in my own kitchen, holding a document that would transfer my late mother's life insurance payout, $180,000, into a joint account with my stepbrother's name on it. I didn't sign. And that decision cost me almost everything. Until it didn't. Let me back up because this story doesn't make sense without context, and the context is the kind of thing that takes years to fully see clearly. My mum, Carol, remarried when I was 14. My stepfather, Ray, came with a son, my stepbrother, who was 16 at the time, 2 years older than me. Ray had money. Not old money, not quiet money, the loud kind. The kind that got mentioned at dinner. The kind that made my mother smile in a way I hadn't seen since before my dad passed. I wanted her to be happy. I was 14, so I tried. My stepbrother, I'll call him by his name, Marcus, did not try. He didn't need to. From the moment Ray walked into our lives, it was clear how the hierarchy worked. Ray's son was the future. Ray's son had potential. Ray's son was going to play college baseball, and then maybe beyond that, who knew? Marcus was everything Ray had built his identity around. I was Carol's daughter. Which meant I was tolerated. It took me years to stop making excuses for that. Years of holidays where Ray's family got the big gift budget and I got the thoughtful but clearly lesser version. Years of hearing Ray introduce Marcus as my son, the athlete, and then turn to me and say, "And this is Carol's daughter, she's in school." Years of my mum looking at me with this apologetic softness that she never quite turned into actual words. She loved me. I know she did. But she loved Ray too, and somewhere in the middle of those two loves she made choices she probably didn't fully recognize as choices. I left for college at 18 and did not look back any more than I had to. I studied accounting at a state school in Virginia, worked 20 hours a week at a campus coffee shop to cover what my financial aid didn't, and graduated with a GPA I was proud of and about $14,000 in debt. I got a job at a mid-sized accounting firm in Richmond. I built something, slowly, practically entirely on my own. My mom got sick the spring I turned 25. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3 at diagnosis, stage 4 within 5 months. The speed of it was, I don't have a word for it. It was like watching someone get pulls underwater and not being able to reach far enough. I moved back home for the last 2 months of her life. Ray tolerated my presence. Marcus showed up on weekends, ate whatever was in the refrigerator, and watched TV with his dad in the evenings. My mom and I talked in the mornings, when she still had energy. She told me things she'd never said before. She apologized in her way. Not directly, she wasn't built for direct, but she said, "You always figured things out on your own." I should have made that easier. I told her it was okay. I meant it, and I didn't mean it, and I think she knew both. She passed in November. The house got very quiet. Ray handled the funeral arrangements with the efficiency of a man who organized things for a living. I handled my grief in the margins, in the parking lot of the grocery store, in the shower at 6 in the morning, in the car, before I walked into the reception I didn't want to attend. 2 weeks after the funeral, Ray sat me down at the kitchen table and told me about the life insurance policy. My mother had taken out a $180,000 policy 8 years earlier, before she got sick, before any of this. I was the named beneficiary. She had told me about it once, briefly, when I was in college. "Just so you know it exists," she'd said. I'd half forgotten about it the way you half forget things that feel too far away to be real. Ray slid a document across the table. It was a reallocation form. Signed by Ray, notarized, and waiting for my signature. It would redirect the payout into a joint account, Ray's name and Marcus's name, on the grounds that the family needed the money to cover estate-related expenses and outstanding household obligations. I read it twice. Then I looked up at Ray. "What outstanding obligations?" I asked. He listed them. A home equity line of credit, Marcus's final year of college tuition, a medical bill balance from my mother's treatment. Some vague category he called carrying costs. I said I'd need time to look this over. That's when he said it. Sign the papers, or I'll make sure you never work in this city again. He said it evenly. No raised voice, no visible anger, just the flat delivery of someone who believed, genuinely believed, that he had the leverage to back it up. Ray knew people. He was on the board of 2 local organizations. He'd lived in Richmond for 30 years. He had the kind of network that could make a phone call feel like a closed door. I stood up, took the document, and left the room. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table, for hours, reading through the form, reading through every piece of paperwork I could find related to my mother's estate. The life insurance policy was clear. I was the beneficiary. It had been filed before her illness, updated once 4 years ago, and it listed no contingencies, no redirections, no joint structure. Ray had no legal standing to redirect this payout. None. What he had was the assumption that I didn't know that. In the morning, I called my mum's attorney, a woman she'd worked with on her will. Quiet, thorough, the kind of lawyer who doesn't fawn confidence but simply has it. I explained what had happened. She asked me to come in. We met 2 days later. She confirmed what I had suspected. The policy was mine. The reallocation form Ray had presented had no legal mechanism to override a named beneficiary on a life insurance policy. It was, in her words, a document designed to look more official than it is. She also told me something I hadn't known. My mother had updated her will 4 months before she died, after her diagnosis. While she still had clarity and time and had left me a specific instruction, the insurance payout was for my future. Housing, stability, whatever I needed. She'd written that in a letter attached to the will, a letter I hadn't known existed. She'd also left the letter with the attorney, not at the house, for reasons that were now obvious. I sat in that office and cried in a way I hadn't let myself yet. Not because of the money, because my mother had seen it coming. She'd known Ray would do this, or something like this, and she'd tried to protect me the only way she had left. The attorney filed the insurance claim on my behalf that same week. What I didn't know yet was what Ray was going to do next. He found out the claim had been filed within 2 weeks. I don't know how, probably through someone at the insurance company, some connection he had, some casual conversation that shouldn't have happened but did. He showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Tuesday evening. I didn't let him in. I stood in the doorway. He was calm in the way that people are calm when they've decided to be frightening. He said that I was making a serious mistake. He said that my mother would have wanted the family taken care of. He said that Marcus had a future and that I was being selfish and small. He said that people in this industry talk and that if I pushed this, my career was going to get very difficult very fast. I recorded all of it. I'd started recording him after the kitchen table conversation. A small digital recorder, the kind I'd used in college for lectures, sitting in my jacket pocket or on a nearby surface, running whenever I was in the same room as him. Not because I'd watched enough crime dramas to think of it, but because my mother's attorney had suggested it. People like Ray, she'd said carefully, sometimes need to hear themselves. I had 6 recordings by the time he showed up at my apartment. That evening at the door became the 7th. He threatened my professional reputation 4 times in that conversation. He told me I was ungrateful. He told me my mother had been too soft with me. He said, and this is the one that I still hear sometimes when I'm not expecting it, Carol always felt guilty about you. That's all this was. Guilt money, you're cashing in on her guilt. I did not respond. I said goodnight and closed the door. The insurance company processed the claim. The payout was deposited into an account in my name only. Ray's attorney sent a letter 2 days later, alleging that I had exerted undue influence over my mother in her final months and that the beneficiary designation had been changed under duress. It was a legal stretch so thin you could see through it. My mother had set that beneficiary designation 4 years earlier, and the attorney's letter attached to the will corroborated her intentions with specific dated language. But it was enough to slow things down. The insurance company flagged the payout for review. The money sat in limbo. Then Ray made a call. I don't know exactly what he said or to whom. What I know is that 3 weeks later, my supervisor at work called me into her office and said she'd received an anonymous complaint about my professional conduct. Specifically, that I had accessed a former client's financial records without authorization. I had not done this. I had never done this. But the complaint had enough specific-sounding language in it that my firm was obligated to investigate. I was put on administrative leave while they looked into it. 2 weeks of sitting at home, watching my career potentially disassemble itself, knowing exactly who had made that call, and knowing that proving it would be almost impossible. I kept going to work on paper. I kept filing my insurance appeals. I kept answering emails from the attorney. And at night, sometimes, I let myself feel how scared I was. My manager, a woman who'd mentored me for 3 years and knew my work better than anyone, pulled me aside before I left on my last day in the office. She said quietly, "We're going to find nothing because there's nothing to find. Be patient." She could have said nothing. She said that instead. She was right. The internal audit took 11 days. They found no unauthorized access, no misconduct, no basis for the complaint. I was reinstated with no mark on my record. My firm also, quietly, noted the timeline of the complaint and the ongoing insurance dispute. They didn't say anything directly, but they documented it internally and they told me they had. Ray's legal challenge to the insurance payout went to a formal review. This is where the recordings mattered. My attorney submitted them as evidence of a pattern of intimidation and coercion. 7 recordings. The kitchen table conversation. The apartment doorway conversation. 2 phone calls I'd had the presence of mind to capture. 3 interactions at family gatherings during the review period where Ray had continued to apply pressure in front of witnesses who hadn't realized they were witnesses. The insurance company's review board listened to 43 minutes of audio over the course of their process. The review concluded in my favor. The payout was released. Ray's challenge was found to have no merit. His attorney's letter about undue influence was dismissed. The documentation from my mother's attorney, the dated will letter, and the original beneficiary filing from 4 years prior made the timeline unambiguous. There was also a secondary finding, the kind that gets noted in a file and doesn't make headlines but matters. Ray's actions had constituted an attempt to obstruct a beneficiary's legal claim through intimidation. It didn't result in criminal charges, but it resulted in something Ray hadn't counted on, a formal record. He also lost a board position. I didn't make that happen. But when the recordings became part of a legal proceeding, they became, in some limited way, part of the record. Someone on the board found out. That's all I know. Marcus, for what it's worth, sent me a text 3 months after everything concluded. It said, "I didn't know what he was doing. I'm sorry. I looked at that text for a long time. I still don't know if it was true." I replied, "Thank you for saying that. I haven't heard from him since. I used some of the money to pay off my student loan. The rest went into savings. A proper emergency fund, finally, for the first time in my adult life. And a down payment fund that's growing slowly and is starting to feel real. I still work at the same firm. My manager got a promotion last year and I was part of the team she took with her. The work is good. The work has always been good. What I think about sometimes is my mother sitting with her attorney 4 months before she died, putting things in writing, making sure there was a record. She was exhausted and scared and facing something no one should have to face, and in the middle of all of that, she thought about me. She thought about what Ray might do. She tried to build a wall around what she was leaving me. She couldn't have known about the recorder in my pocket. She couldn't have known that her own careful documentation would combine with mine to create something Ray's money and connections couldn't dismantle. But maybe she knew the principle. Maybe she knew that when someone counts on you not having proof, the most powerful thing you can do is have proof. Ray counted on me being grateful enough or scared enough or confused enough to sign that paper and walk away. He forgot that my mother raised me to read the fine print. I've thought a lot about what made Ray so certain I would sign. He'd watched me for 13 years. He'd watched me clear my plate quietly at dinners where I wasn't really included. He'd watched me work through college without asking anyone for help. He'd watched me build a life in a city where I had no connections, no safety net, no one making calls on my behalf. And I think what he decided he saw was someone small. Someone who had learned to take up less space, so she'd learned to take less, period. He wasn't entirely wrong about my history, but he mistook adaptation for weakness. Those are not the same thing. Here's what I've come to understand about the way Ray operated. People who use power as a substitute for integrity always have a ceiling. They can go very far on intimidation alone. Ray had gone quite far, but the moment they encounter someone who refuses to be intimidated and also has documentation, the whole structure collapses. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily. Like a wall that looks solid until you find the one place where the foundation was never properly laid. Ray's foundation was the assumption that I had no proof and no recourse. My mother removed one of those before she died. I removed the other myself, one recorded conversation at a time. I don't think of what happened as luck. I think of it as a collision between his carelessness and my preparation, and the outcome of that collision was always going to depend on who had done the work. He hadn't. I had. That's not fate, that's just how things actually work when you strip away the noise. What I carry with me now, more than the money, more than the legal outcome, is the understanding of what my mother did in those last 4 months. She was sick and exhausted and facing her own mortality, and she still sat down with an attorney and wrote a letter and made sure there was a record. She didn't have the energy to confront Ray directly. She probably knew it wouldn't work anyway. So she did the thing that was actually within her control. She built something documented, something dated, something that couldn't be rewritten after the fact. That's a kind of intelligence I want to carry forward. Not paranoia, not moving through the world expecting everyone to betray you, but the quiet discipline of keeping your own record, knowing what you're owed, reading what you sign. Understanding that the people who count on you being uninformed are always more fragile than they appear, because their entire strategy depends on your ignorance. The integrity piece matters too, maybe more than anything else. I could have responded to Ray the way he came at me. I had recordings that were damaging. I had a firm that was, by then, very aware of what he'd done. There were things I could have escalated further, people I could have called. I didn't. I took what was mine, documented what needed to be documented, and stopped. Not because I felt generous toward Ray, I didn't, but because I knew that dragging something out past the point of resolution doesn't make you stronger. It just keeps you inside the thing you're trying to leave. My mum raised me to figure things out on my own. I used to think that was partly an apology, her way of acknowledging that she hadn't always cleared the path the way she should have. Now I think it was also the truest gift she could give me, because the people who learn to figure things out on their own don't need someone else's power to feel secure. And when someone comes for what's theirs, they already know exactly where to look.